Hey everybody, it's Matt the Dice Chucker from the Literary Gamers coming to you with a new series, basically games that flew under the radar, not only for us, myself and Jen, but for the community as a whole. Today, we are taking a look at a game that was released in early to mid 2021, I believe, and that is, it's a big box, so I'm going to try to get it into the frame. Ghostbusters Men in Black Ecto-Terrestrial Invasion. This is published by IDW Games, designed by Panda Cult Games. Meant for about 1 to 4 players, and probably an hour and a half to play. So let's head down to the table to take a look at how it plays, and then I'll meet you back up here in a few seconds. I'm interrupting this video because I heard a dirty rumor that over 80% of you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. What's holding you back? There's a tiny little red button underneath this video that says subscribe, and then there's a tiny little bell where you'll get a notification on your devices that tells you when you should be watching our videos. And if you watch our videos and subscribe, then you'll be kept up with all the content, do all the things. I can't list them off because there's so many things. Just go and do the things. All right, bye. All right, everybody, I've done my best to get as much of this game in frame as I can. It is a very large game. So this is the first scenario of the Ghostbusters Men in Black. It almost looks like X Men in Black. Ecto-Terrestrial Invasion scenario book. This is episode 1A. Mayhem, Multiplicity, and One Big Trap. So on the board we have quite a few things happening. First off, we have 2 teams set up here. At the beginning of the game, you're going to choose 1 Ghostbuster and 1 Men in Black. So for this team over here, and I'm going to move this camera around a lot because there's a lot to cover. So this team up here has Ray and Agent L. And you'll notice they have batteries because it takes batteries to power up their weapons. And on this team over here, we have Peter and Agent K. All right, let me stabilize this again, more on the center of the board. When you take a look at the board, you'll notice typical Zombicide-esque game where you have doors that you're going to be opening. You have spawn points throughout. Any spawn point that is on it looks like brown on its brown side is inactive, and green is active. So as long as the doors are closed, those spawn points are inactive, and we start with 4 of them in the inactive state, and there's one over there. You'll also notice that there are these blue tokens here. While you're on a space with a blue token, you may interact with it and take a gadget, and so there's a gadget deck over here, and it usually has a range. Oh, sorry, I believe that's the range. That's the range, and this is for a 2+ game. And this is for the semi-co-op element of this game. And then you can have a hand of 4 gadgets at any time. And if you want to draw a gadget and you have 4, you'll discard 1. There's also these tokens here. These are objectives. They're face down because we need to collect 4 blue jars and bring them to the radio tower over here. And if there's a red jar, then that is an empty jar. Now, there's also these points here. Those are starting points for our teams. And overall, those are all the tokens that are here on the board, and along with the batteries that are used for weapons. Now, on a player's card, let's take a look at Ray. He has an ability, and that's his health, and those are the dice he rolls to defend. Now, at the beginning of the game, we don't have any aliens on the board yet, but we do have 2 green spawn points. So what we do is for 1 or 2 players, you roll 2 green dice. This symbol would be to bring out a grunt. This one is a gunner. And this one is, focus, is the drainer. We also have the crit symbol, which I'll explain in just a moment. So for each spawn point, we'll go ahead and roll 2 dice. And I got a drainer and a gunner. Now, a drainer, first off, there's a 4 figure maximum in each square, but the drainers take up 2 figures. All right, so let's go ahead and do the other spawn point, and that was 2 grunts. And they'll just go right down here. And we have a sheet right here. This is how far they attack. The grunts have 3 hit points, the gunners have 2, and the drainers have 4. Alright, we keep that around. Now, at the beginning of the game, what we're going to do, and I'm going to move this up a little bit so I hope it doesn't cause too many people to be sick. We're going to drop 10 green dice into the fire tower, into the firehouse, which is a cube dice tower. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and any that fly out are going to be redropped. So, and we have one that fell out, so we redrop it. Okay, so now we have a tower that's been seeded. As the game goes on, you're going to be dropping more dice into the tower, or you're going to be pulling levels out of the tower, and the dice that fall out are going to spawn enemies. Alright, so let's head back to the board here. On your turn, oh, by the way, your weapons also have special abilities sometimes. Agent L's plasma pistols can damage this weapon. From this weapon may be assigned to one additional square within range. Let's go over the weapon cards too. That's the range of the card, that's the dice you roll, and that's the amount of batteries you need to spend to activate the weapon. So we'll talk more about attacking in just a second. Let's go over how the turn goes. So, here's our nifty little player aid, focus. Alright. You have an option to do your actions and attack or rest at the beginning of a turn. So at the attack, it's before or after your actions are taken. Of course, moving is moving 1 square. Alright. It also says here, move might trigger an ET attack. If you move into a spot with ETs, Ecto-Terrestrials, you will roll your defense. So that's Ray. Ray rolls 2 defense dice. And you're looking for either this symbol to block or the symbol of the aliens. So, we were able to block the gunner because there's a gunner in that space, but we were not able to block the drainer because that's a grunt symbol and not a crit as well. So we'll just take a handy-dandy wound token and put it on Ray's card, if that's what he was to do. Alright. So he moves into there. That's the move action. Come on. You can also teleport. You can teleport from any spawn point to any spawn point that's active. When you do that, like let's say there weren't any aliens in this square right here. Let's just say. And we wanted to teleport there. Okay, there. You can spend an action to do that. However, teleportation doesn't come without a cost. You have to roll a dice. And if it rolls a crit, you are fine. Anything else, you have to take a wound. Alright. So, hold on 1 second as I'm looking for something here. Where did I put that thing? Anyway, there's a lot of stuff in this box. So, things are going to get lost. Anyway. Back to our player card. We can also stand up if you've been knocked down, and I'll be talking about being knocked down. If you are knocked down, it's the first action you have to take. And just, boop, stand up. You can also interact with anything in the square by picking up a gadget. Those are those blue tokens we talked about. You can also pick up an objective, which are those. You can interact with an objective, which means you can also give them to somebody else on your team, I believe in the same square, or open a door. When you open a door, let's say Agent L was there, and she chose an action to open a door. Any inactive spawn point, let's move down here a little bit. Any inactive spawn point will become active, and you roll based on the players. Once again, for 1 and 2, it's 2 green dice. Aha! Now, this is where I do need the rulebook because I want to make sure I do this the right way. When you spawn, and the rulebook's pretty good. There's some things I'd like to fix, but the rulebook overall is pretty good. If you ever roll crits, which is what I rolled a double crit. Drainers are put on to the spawn point. Alright. So we would put 2 drainers on the spawn point. That circle is now full because drainers take up 2 points within a circle of 4 points. Then we would take tower dice, which are the green dice, equal to the number of crits, into the firehouse tower. Okay? Now what might happen, so let's go up here, we roll 2 crits, so let's put two dice into the tower. 3 dice popped out. Okay, so now, let's take a look here. We rolled a gunner, and a crit. Let's head back down to what we have there. Alright, this activates what's called, just by doing that, activates what's called a Psychokinetic Disruption. So what happens is we would take two gunners and we put them on an active spawn point. But because we also rolled another crit, we'd place a drainer on a spawn point and drop this dice again into the tower. I'm not going to do that now, but that's just basically what would happen if there was a spawn that happened. So those are pretty much the actions you can do, or you can spend all 4 of your actions to do a double attack, which is to attack with each of your characters. Now, if you're attacking the same square, let's say Agent L and Ray attacked this same square, afterwards, everything would get knocked down because you've crossed the streams, alright? That's why you would be standing up, or an alien effect that would cause you to be knocked down, alright? Now, before or after you take those 4 actions, you're allowed to make an attack with one of your characters. Let's say Agent L was attacking into this square right here. So her weapon needs 2 batteries to go off. Alright. And then it rolls 3 attack dice. Once again, you're going to do a wound on each alien, dependent on the symbol you rolled. And crits we'll talk about in just a second. So she rolled 2 gunners and a grunt. She has a gunner in here. Gunners only take 2 health. So she would get a trap token and put it down right there. The Men in Black can only hold 2 trap tokens, while the Ghostbusters can hold 3, as you can see up there. And then the Drainer gets nothing. However, if there was a crit rolled, Agent L can choose how to assign that crit to the square that she's attacked. Alright? Now, besides taking any actions here, you can always decide to rest. If you had defeated characters, you would return them to one of the following starting squares: a teammate's square or a square adjacent to a teammate. You'd regain all of your batteries. You get 1 point per trap that you've discarded. That's why you want to keep the traps on you. And then you gain a gadget card. I should say also that when you trap a grunt, you get a point. Trap a shooter, you gain a point. Trap a drainer, you get 2 points. And you track your points with, I pointed to somewhere the camera's not looking at, to that up there. Once all the heroes have taken their actions, we then go into what's called the Hot Sheets phase. Hot Sheets are up here. We reveal a card, and we do a few things when we reveal that card. First, we have 3 trackers. 1 for the grunts, 1 for the gunners, 1 for the drainers. Okay? We would raise that for each symbol here on the card. Alright? And if it had an effect, we'd do it. This one just says the end is nigh, and it raises all 3. After that, we would raise this to 1, this to 1, and this to 1. If ever there was any of the trackers at 3, we would do a Psychokinetic Disruption, and the player with the lowest score at the time is going to pull out one of the levels of the Firehouse Tower. And let's see what happens. A dice comes out and spawns a grunt. Alright, so we'd find an active spawn point and put a grunt down there. Once that part of the game has occurred, then we would move all of the Ecto-Terrestrials. And of course, they move 1 square towards the closest hero. And there's rules for cases like this where there are 2 here. Oh, I'm talking about something that I'm not even showing on the map. There are rules for this case here where, depending on which one it moves to, will be described here, right here on this page in the rules. Okay? And once they all move, you take a look at this here, which is their range and target. Everything shoots in a straight line. There's no diagonals. Alright? And then you would defend. Of course, when they move in, you automatically have to make the roll. So Ray would move in, and he rolled a crit, so he wouldn't take a damage, and then they would attack. I believe it's once. So you'd add up the amount of ecto-terrestrials in a square. Let's say Agent L was here, and the drainers were here. She'd roll 2 dice, one for each. Well, sorry. She'd roll her defense. She's getting hit for 2, though. All right, and she would take 2 wounds. I should also mention that if you're in the range of the drainer's attack, you do lose a battery. And then, once that is done, you pass the first player token, and there's boss rules as well that I'll let you discover on your own. And there's a few ways you can lose depending on the scenario book. The scenario book will tell you if you get all 4 blue canisters to the satellite tower, your team has effectively won the game. If the entirety of the tower has been removed for all those panels, there's 8 of them, then you'll lose the game. And then there's points based on the objectives and things like that. Both will win. Whoever has the most points is the better team. You can also play the solo mode, which pretty much takes a lot of those rules of the semi-co-op and turns them around a bit to be a bit more full cooperative. All right. That is pretty much the basics of how you play Ghostbusters Men in Black Ecto-Terrestrial Invasion. Let's head back up and hear my thoughts on this. So those are the basics for Ghostbusters Men in Black Ecto-Terrestrial Invasion. I came upon this game in my FLGS and I was intrigued. I was intrigued for about 8 months by it before I eventually picked it up and gave it a try. The reason I was hesitant was I had believed it was part of the original Ghostbusters release from Cryptozoic back in 2015. That big miniatures game. And I say big because I think the Kickstarter pledge for it was huge. And it had so much content that was exclusive to the Kickstarter and you could never get on a retail. We ended up playing the original Ghostbusters. The game was ruined for us by a severe alpha gamer. We ended up playing it at a convention, and the alpha gamer stood up at the end of the table and just started moving our pieces for us. And when we tried to call him out, people that were running the table were like, no, this is fine. He's right. But at the same time, I wasn't making decisions, and I was turned off completely from the Ghostbusters game. But then I saw that it was IDW, and then I was like, okay, so this is a little different. I began researching the game online and found out that there was some sort of controversy with the group that they had that was going to make the minis, Ninja Division. But as I looked further into it, it seems that IDW put out a statement saying that they had changed it and they weren't going to be using Ninja Division for it. But at the same time as this game's campaign was going on, IDW Games was starting to shut down. And they said they were pretty much going to release the Kickstarters that they had. I think it was this one. And the Batman animated series, Shadow of the Bat miniatures game. That is the whole title, because there's so many other Batman games out there. So yeah, let me just check here, because I got it right behind me. All the rule books. I don't believe that that Ninja Division was involved with this at all. I know Ninja Division has had controversy in the past with their production and their transparency for people. Yeah, they eventually hired someone named Hector Moran, and I don't see Ninja Division anywhere in the credits. So yes, they went with somebody else after there was controversy over that. So, finally, I was looking into this game and I watched a few videos about it, and I have been personally working on a game that uses a cube tower. What intrigued me about this game was it had a cube tower, but it was dice in the cube tower. Now, the back of the box says Dice Tower, but it is basically a combination of the two, and I was intrigued. So we ended up playing it the other day, and let's talk about the game itself. What do I think about it, and how does it hold up to my expectations, and why do I think it flew under the radar? And first off, let me get the negative out of the way. And this is a positive negative. The rulebook's pretty good. Compared to other rulebooks from IDW and games like this, these miniature-style games, I call this a Zombicide-esque clone. In fact, we're getting rid of our Zombicide Black Plague because we don't ever play it because we were like, this is just so much fun. Not all of the tokens are described in here, and if they are, they're not easy to find. That's one of the reasons I've kind of knocked this rulebook a little bit, is because I've got so many tokens that I can interact with, and only a handful of them are talked about. So it says here, interact with an objective, which is fine, but there are sometimes other things that can happen because of cards. We had to look up diligently to find out what happens when you get slimed. So, yes, we eventually found out what we had to do, but it took us a bit. And you always get that deflated feeling when you're playing a game that's supposed to be this fast-paced and enjoyable. I love a good dice-chucking, dungeon crawl style game. And then all the energy at the table just deflates when you have to start going online and finding information about what's going on here. So if there was one improvement I would make about the rulebook, it was I wish there was more stuff about tokens. Not everything is described. But overall, the rulebook was very easy to understand. At first, and one of the things that I missed in the rulebook was that the first time we played was that when you defended, you needed to roll the dice of the alien attacking you to defend their hit or a crit. The first time we played, somehow we got in our heads that we only crits defended our characters. So our characters, I think, were defeated 4 or 5 times before we finished the first scenario. The last thing that we did is Jen and I, we bring in these games in the house. If they are a campaign, the campaign is going to die. That's why I've been trying to be better about completing campaign games, even if it's just me doing them solo. So when I found out that you could only upgrade your weapons and equipment, between every scenario, I was like, I'm going to probably skip around the scenario book. So we did make a rule change that if you wanted to upgrade a weapon, you could pick out of the 3 levels of weapons, and then you would spend your points on them instead of dollars. Same thing for equipment, while engaging with the gadget counter. But that's the only thing we changed, and it's a change for us. You do not have to change it for you. That was just so we could get more weapons and have more fun with it. My last negative, and it's, let's see. This is the scenario book. And right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then we have the extra scenario here, 10. There are 10 scenarios. The game is practically dead. Because IDW doesn't exist anymore, unless another... IDW Games doesn't exist anymore. Unless there's another company that comes by and picks this up, this is a dead game. That is why I believe it flew under the radar. As soon as people saw it was IDW Games, they were like, well, it's never going to get any support, so there's no reason to buy it. So what did I like about the game? I thought that it was very fast-paced. It had a lot of really great thematic ties to it. The only thing I didn't like was the semi-co-op. The semi-co-op is... I mean, yeah, you can just track your points and see how you do, but you don't really need to be playing with all those battery-stealing things. For a lot of people, that stopped them from picking up the game. So what we've done is we've gone into the solo mode here. Where'd you go, solo mode? Where'd you go? And we basically played it as a solo game. Yeah, it's got a solo mode right here. So they should have done solo play / complete co-op instead of, semi-co-op through the whole game. Thematically, it makes no sense that the Ghostbusters would be attacking each other and the Men in Black would be attacking each other, stealing things from each other. It just makes no sense. Thematically. If you had Ghostbusters on one team and the other player was doing Men in Black on another team, that might make more sense. Who wants more glory for getting rid of more of the Ecto-Terrestrials, So, when we finished the first scenario, yes, Jen scored more points than I did, but we took it as we won, So it's a simple fix. Castle Panic had the same thing. Whoever killed the most monsters was the best monster killer. Whoever gets rid of the most Ecto-Terrestrials is the best alien ghost killer. Sorry, buster. But in the end, you both win the game. I loved the simplicity of the dice mechanics, and the dread of dropping dice down the tower and wondering if it was going to knock other dice out. I think it's hilarious that the rulebook tells you if you bump the table, if someone nudges the tower just a little bit, if a pet is against the tower and a dice falls out, you got to play it. I think that's hysterical. A lot of stuff like this where it's about balance. Of course, it's going to be more around the line of just set it back up the way it was. But this game is like, nope, you will do it as it's supposed to be done and play it as it goes. That's neat. The damage was fairly straightforward. I felt like I was, more than anything, having fun. And I know that a lot of people are looking for good games with puzzles. When you're looking at American-style games, you want something that you can wrap your mind around. I do enjoy Massive Darkness, which shares a lot with this style of game. But for me, the theme dragged me in. I've not yet played a good Ghostbusters game. And I don't believe I played a good Men in Black game. So for me, this sat on a shelf at the FLGS for the longest time, and I finally just decided, let's pull the trigger. And I do believe it flew under the radar completely for the reason that unless there are fan sites and the fans promote this game, I don't believe it's ever going any further, but there could be some fan-made scenarios. Who knows? But that is pretty much my thoughts on Ghostbusters, Men in Black, Ecto-Terrestrial Invasion. If I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it an 8 because of its fun value. So that's all I'm going to tell you this week. Next week, we'll take another look at a game that flew under the radar, why I think it flew under the radar, and what my opinions are of it. We'll see you next time, everybody. Bye.